I don't know how long I'd been hanging there, chained to a jagged rock outcrop in Fossil Butte National Monument. The sun blazed overhead, scorching the Wyoming desert with relentless heat, and I was losing the fight to stay conscious. My name's Lucas Miller, and for 32 years, I've been a ranger protecting Wyoming's wildlands, its wildlife, and the folks who pass through. But right now, I wasn't patrolling trails or tracking poachers. I was trapped, my wrists raw and bleeding behind me, the heavy chains biting into my chest and arms, like they were part of the stone itself. Before you continue with the story, where in the world are you listening? Subscribe to the channel to see what happens next. My breath came in short, dry gasps, the air so hot it burned my lungs. Blood dripped from a gash on my temple, trickling down my sunburned cheek, stinging like fire. My uniform was torn, soaked with sweat and crusted with dust. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. Hadn't for hours, maybe days. 2 days, I think, since the ambush. I could still hear their voices, angry and muffled under bandanas. They wanted access to the monument, land for illegal fossil trafficking, drilling, whatever money could buy in the shadows. I'd said no, so they made an example of me. Left me here to bake, to vanish without a trace. The heat was playing tricks on my mind. I kept seeing things, shimmers in the haze, whispers in the wind. I was drifting, my lips cracked and throat parched when I heard it. Soft paws crunching through the gritty sand. My swollen eyes cracked open and panic shot through me. Coyotes, I thought, my old survival training kicking in. Stay still. Don't show weakness. But as the shapes got closer, I saw them clearly. 5 German shepherds, their coats dusted with desert grit. Their eyes glowed golden, sharp, and alert. These weren't strays. They moved with purpose, like soldiers. One of them, bigger than the rest, stepped forward. A scar ran over his right eye. He locked onto me, and I swear he saw right through me. I was too weak to speak, but something about him steadied my racing heart. He didn't bark or growl. He just sat there right in front of me, ears perked, chest proud, like a statue carved from the sun-baked earth. Another dog sniffed the base of the rock, while a third circled the area. The others fanned out, moving in a way that felt tactical. Tears stung my eyes, half from the dust, half from something deeper. I couldn't explain it, but I felt it. These dogs weren't here by accident. "Good boys," I whispered, my voice barely a croak. The alpha, the one with the scar, stepped closer and sniffed at the chain. Then he let out a single sharp bark that echoed across the dunes. I didn't know if anyone would hear, but the dogs did. They sprang into action. One started digging around the chain, uncovering the padlock buried in the sand. Another leapt up, barking toward the horizon like he was signaling something, or someone. The sun seemed to pulse, and I was fading fast, slipping in and out of darkness. But then I heard it. Distant voices, boots pounding through the dirt. A human voice, urgent. "I see him. Over here." I barely lifted my head. Through the haze of heat and pain, I saw a man in a police uniform, flanked by more handlers, breaking through the shimmering air. The dogs had done it. They'd brought help. As my vision dimmed, I caught one last glimpse of the alpha shepherd. He stood a few feet away, staring at me, not with curiosity or confusion, but with something like understanding. Then the world went black. I woke to the sharp sting of antiseptic in my nose and the steady beep-beep of a heart monitor. My body felt like it had been pounded by a sledgehammer, every bone and nerve throbbing with a dull, relentless ache. I blinked slowly, the fluorescent lights of the ranger station's infirmary searing my eyes. After days under the merciless sun of Fossil Butte National Monument, the air-conditioned coolness here was almost too much. My skin prickled, raw and unfamiliar, still burning from the desert's touch. I tried to move, but my limbs felt like lead, heavy, and not quite my own. A nurse appeared at my side, her face soft and kind. "You're safe now," she said gently. "You're lucky they found you in time." My throat was parched, like I'd swallowed sand, and when I tried to speak, all that came out was a rasp. "The dogs. Where are the dogs?" She smiled, a warm glint in her eyes. "They're outside, the K9 unit that found you. They've been waiting, especially the big one with the scar." I let my head sink back into the pillow, a wave of relief washing over me, cooling the fire in my chest. It wasn't a mirage. Those dogs were real. Their eyes, their purpose. It was all real. Later that day, Sheriff Grayson walked in. He was a rugged man in his 50s, built like a desert boulder, solid and unyielding. His face held a mix of relief and something harder, like anger held in check. "Miller," he said gruffly, dragging a chair close to my bed, "you've got one hell of a story to tell." I nodded, my head still clouded, like heat rising off asphalt. "How'd they find me?" I asked, my voice stronger now but still rough, like gravel. Grayson leaned back, crossing his arms. "Our K9 team was running a summer training circuit in the monument's eastern flats. A dust storm kicked up, and they got separated from their handler. We thought they were lost. But those dogs, they didn't just wander back to the checkpoint. They came straight to the main station, barking like mad, covered in grit. Hannah Torres, one of the handlers, knew something was up. She trusted them, loaded up the Jeep, and followed. They led her right to you." I closed my eyes, my chest tightening, the memory of that blazing sun searing my mind. "They saved my life," I whispered. Grayson nodded, his jaw tight. "Yeah, but here's where it gets strange." He pulled a folder from under his arm and flipped it open. Inside was a map of the monument, marked with hand-drawn notes. "You were chained to a rock in a sector we haven't patrolled in over 3 years. No active trails, no dig sites, no access roads. Whoever did this to you knew exactly where to dump someone they didn't want found." My jaw clenched, memories of those muffled voices flashing back, bandanas, not ski masks, but just as cold. "Illegal operations," I said, my voice low. "They wanted me quiet. They almost got it." "We'll find them," Grayson muttered, his tone like a promise carved in stone. Then he stood and opened the door to the hallway. A moment later, I heard the soft click of claws on the tile. A large German shepherd padded in, calm, steady, his scarred eye as sharp as I remembered. He stopped in the doorway, ears forward, then walked straight to my bed and rested his head gently on the mattress. "Meet Bailey," Grayson said. 9 years old, decorated military K9. Retired from service after his handler was killed overseas. Since then, he's had trouble adjusting. Doesn't bond, doesn't trust. But for some reason, he chose you. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched Bailey's thick neck. His fur was coarse but warm, grounding me like an oasis in the desert I'd survived. He closed his eyes and leaned into my touch, like it was the only comfort he'd ever allowed himself. I felt a lump in my throat, something heavy and unspoken passing between us. Hannah Torres, the handler, stepped into the room. She was in her early 30s with deep brown eyes and sun-bleached hair pulled into a tight braid. "Bailey's never acted like this before," she said, her voice soft with awe. Not since he lost his partner. It's like something shifted in him when he found you." I looked from her to Bailey, my heart heavy with a weight I couldn't name. "I wasn't just another rescue to him," I said quietly. "He understood what I was feeling." Hannah nodded, her eyes glistening. "He stayed by your side the whole time. Wouldn't move until we got you out on the stretcher. Even then, he kept looking back at you, like he wasn't sure we could be trusted. I ran my fingers through Bailey's fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. Out there in the desert, I'd been ready to let go, ready to let the heat take me. But Bailey and his team hadn't given up. They'd seen something worth saving, something I'd almost forgotten was there. And now, sitting here with his head on my bed, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about me surviving. It was about us finding each other. I was staring into Bailey's eyes, his steady gaze like a lifeline pulling me back from the edge. "You saved me," I whispered, my voice raw, cracked from the desert's grip. "You chose me." The words felt like a tether, binding us in a way I couldn't explain. But before I could catch my breath, the door slammed open, hinges rattling. A deputy stumbled in, his face ghost white, eyes wide with panic. "Sheriff, trouble," he stammered. "Fresh tire tracks in Sector 13. Chains. Cut. Someone was there last night." Grayson's face turned to iron, his voice low and dangerous. "They came back." I forced myself upright, pain stabbing through my ribs like a branding iron. My heart lurched, the heat of fear rising in my chest. "They think I'm still out there," I said, each word sharp with dread. "They're here to finish it." Silence crashed over the room, heavy and suffocating. Bailey snapped to attention, ears pinned, tail stiff as a blade. His golden eyes burned, sensing what I felt. Something was closing in. The ranger station, usually alive with chatter and static, went deathly still. Dust swirled outside, kicked up by a dry wind that baked the world in gold, but inside, the air crackled with menace. I heard deputies muttering behind locked doors, their voices tight with fear. Grayson had barricaded himself in the comms room since the tracks were found. Whoever was out there wasn't done with me. I perched on a bench by the side window, clutching a lightweight blanket that did nothing to ease the fire in my bones. My bandaged hands trembled, and sunburned bruises throbbed along my jaw and ribs, but my mind was razor sharp, buzzing with alarm. The desert outside seemed to shimmer, like it was hiding something alive and hungry beneath the haze. Bailey crouched at my feet, not resting, never resting, his breath a slow, deliberate rhythm. That scar over his eye made him look like a warrior to others, but to me, it was a badge of survival, a mirror of my own scars. We were both still here, against the odds. Hannah Torres slipped in, her footsteps hushed, carrying a bottle of water that glistened with condensation in the stifling air. "Still dodging the painkillers?" she asked, her voice tight, her eyes scanning the room like she felt the same shadow I did. I grabbed the bottle, my fingers brushing hers, desperate for any anchor. "Can't afford a foggy head," I said, my voice low. "Not now." She sat close, her words barely audible. "Feds are coming. This isn't just fossil theft. It's too slick. Maps, gear, a plan to leave you for dead." They knew what they were doing. I glanced at Bailey, his gaze locked on the window, unblinking. "They made one mistake," I said, my voice hard. "Him." Hannah followed my eyes to the dog. "He wasn't supposed to be there. None of them were." I leaned closer, my pulse hammering like the desert sun. "They weren't lost, Hannah. Something sent them." She didn't argue. She'd trained canines long enough to know when logic ran dry. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He hasn't left you once. Even when I call, he waits for you." I met Bailey's stare, and it hit me like a jolt. He was the ranger I'd lost somewhere along the way. Loyal, unbreakable, always watching. "He's what I used to be," I said, my throat tight, parched but steady. Hannah hesitated, then pressed on, urgency creeping into her tone. "Could he work with you? I mean, really work?" I blinked, caught off guard. "He's retired. They said he was too broken." "Broken?" She scoffed, her eyes fierce. He's never bonded like this. If you took him on, you'd need to train, build the team. But Lucas, he's already yours." I looked at Bailey, and he didn't flinch, his gaze steady as stone. Something wordless passed between us, a promise forged in that blazing hell where he found me. "If he's in," I whispered, "I'm all in." A bark ripped through the silence, sharp, controlled like a gunshot. Bailey surged to his feet, hackles raised, nose high, every muscle screaming danger. Hannah jolted, her hand flying to her radio. "What is it, boy?" Another bark, louder, a warning that vibrated in my chest. Then, a metallic clang from the back of the building, sharp and deliberate. My stomach dropped. "The garage door," I said, snatching the radio from the bench, my hand shaking. Before I could speak, the lights flickered and died. Darkness swallowed us whole. Hannah's flashlight snapped on, its beam trembling as it cut through the black. "Stay here," she said, her voice sharp, but I could hear the fear beneath it. Bailey growled, low and primal, planting himself in front of the door. His teeth glinted in the faint light. Hannah froze. "He's not letting you go alone," I said, my voice steady despite the dread clawing my gut. A shadow darted past the window, fast, human-shaped, gone in a blink. My breath caught, the dry air stinging my lungs. Then a deafening crash, glass exploding at the station's far end. Hannah keyed her radio, her voice urgent. "Intruder, south entrance. Repeat, south entrance." But a thunderous bang cut her off, echoing through the halls like a death knell. I grabbed the only weapon I could find, an old hatchet on the wall, its weight hot and heavy in my hand, warmed by the day's heat. "Move!" I hissed. Bailey was already ahead, slinking low, his eyes like twin flames in the dark. We crept through the corridor, past the sleeping quarters and mess hall, every step a pulse in my ears. The backup generator was silent. The air felt charged, like the moment before a dust storm breaks. Then, a voice low and venomous, just around the corner. "I told you he wouldn't die out there." My blood turned to ash, my grip tightening on the hatchet. It was them, the same voices from the ambush, cold and calculating. Footsteps scraped the concrete, slow, deliberate, hunting. Bailey's growl was barely audible, but it vibrated through me, a warning and a promise. They were here to kill me, to erase their mistake. But they didn't know I wasn't alone. They didn't know Bailey was with me, and together, we were ready to fight. The hatchet's handle dug into my palm, its weight a hot reminder of the fight ahead, warmed by the desert sun that lingered in the air. The ranger station was a tomb of shadows, every creak and gust outside screaming danger. Whoever was inside moved with a hunter's arrogance, their steps slow, deliberate, like they knew they had us cornered. My body ached, sunburned bruises pulsing with every heartbeat, but adrenaline burned through the pain, sharpening my senses. Bailey stayed close, his shoulder brushing my leg, his golden eyes glowing in the dark. I could feel his pulse, steady and fierce, syncing with mine. A wordless vow that we were in this together. We'd always been connected, from that blistering moment in the desert when he found me. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, like he saw the part of me I'd buried, the ranger who never quit, who lived for the wild. Now, as we crept through the black hallway, his silent steps mirrored my own, his breath a rhythm I leaned into. He wasn't just a dog. He was my shadow, my strength, the piece of me I thought I'd lost. Hannah followed, her flashlight stabbing the darkness in tight bursts, her sidearm drawn. We cleared the supply room, empty, just crates and stale, dusty air. The south hallway was next, silent except for the wind clawing at the walls, carrying the faint grit of the desert. Then a sound stopped me cold. Breathing, low and predatory, seeping from behind the generator room door. My heart slammed against my ribs, sweat stinging my eyes. I raised a hand, signaling quiet. Bailey's ears flicked, his body going taut, every muscle honed to that sound. His eyes met mine, and in that split second, I felt it. A surge of trust, like he was telling me, "I've got you." I leaned close to Hannah, my whisper barely audible, my throat dry as sand. "We open that door, we don't know what's waiting. Ready?" She nodded, her grip on the gun steady, but I felt Bailey shift, his warmth pressing against my leg, grounding me. I took a breath, my chest tight, and kicked the door open. The room seemed empty, shadows swallowing the corners. Hannah's light swept across scattered tools, a splintered chair, an oil can tipped over, its contents pooling like tar in the heat. Then, a flash of steel. "Back!" Hannah shouted. A man lunged from behind the generator, a crowbar arcing toward my head. I dodged, the metal slicing the air with a deadly hum. Bailey was a blur, launching himself with a snarl, his jaws clamping onto the man's arm. The crowbar hit the floor with a clang, and the man roared, "Filthy mutt!" But Bailey didn't flinch. His growl vibrated through me, fierce and unyielding, like he was fighting for both of us. I grabbed the man's other arm, slamming him against the wall, my anger fueled by Bailey's courage. "Thought you could finish me," I growled, my voice raw, cracked from the desert's bite. He thrashed, but between my weight and Bailey's grip, he was nothing. Hannah cuffed him fast, her voice steady as she read his rights, but the man spat blood and grinned, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think I'm alone?" My stomach twisted, dread clawing up my spine like a heat wave. Bailey's head snapped up, his ears pinned, sensing the same threat I did. "Perimeter check, now!" Hannah snapped. We left the man chained and bolted to the hallway. Outside the window, flashlights danced through the dust, too many, moving like coyotes. Then, pop, pop, pop. Gunfire cracked the night. A deputy's voice screamed over the radio. "West side. They're hitting the vehicle garage." I turned to Hannah, my pulse racing, sweat soaking my shirt. "They're not after me anymore. They want it all gone." Bailey barked, a single piercing note that cut through my fear. He sprinted for the main entrance, and I followed without a thought, my boots pounding, pain fading under the fire in my chest. He was my guide, my compass, and I'd follow him into hell if he led me there. Through the side window, I saw them. Two masked figures prying open the garage, rifles slung across their backs. A dune buggy growled to life, its headlights slashing the dark. "North Flats," Hannah hissed. "They hit that desert. We'll never catch them." I dropped to one knee, my hand finding Bailey's neck, his fur coarse and warm under my fingers, gritty with dust. His eyes locked onto mine, fierce and unwavering, and I felt that same spark from the desert, a promise we'd made to survive together. "Can you stop them, boy?" I whispered. He didn't need words. Bailey tore through the emergency exit, his paws a whisper on the sand, a dark streak against the heat haze. Hannah and I scrambled after him, the wind howling, dust stinging my face like shards of glass. My lungs burned, my legs begged to collapse, but Bailey's silhouette kept me moving, his purpose pulling me forward like a lifeline. In the clearing, the buggy's engine roared. One intruder was astride it, twisting the throttle, ready to vanish. But Bailey was faster. He slammed into the man's chest with a bone-jarring thud, sending him sprawling into a dust drift with a scream. The man thrashed, but Bailey pinned him, his growl low and lethal, protecting me like I was his own. The second figure raised a rifle, its barrel catching the moonlight. My heart stopped, but instinct took over. I hurled the hatchet. The handle cracked against the gunman's wrist, the rifle flying into the sand. Hannah tackled him before he could recover, her cuffs snapping shut. Deputies flooded in, their shouts swallowed by the wind, cuffing the intruders and securing the garage. I stood there, chest heaving, my clothes soaked with sweat, my body trembling from heat and fury. Then I saw Bailey. He limped toward me, blood seeping from a graze above his leg, his fur matted with dust and grit. But his head was high, his eyes bright, unbroken. I sank to my knees, the sand scorching through my pants, and opened my arms. Bailey walked into me, his head resting heavy on my chest, his breath warm against my neck. I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine, and something broke open inside me. "You saved us again," I whispered, my voice thick, tears stinging my eyes, blurred by dust. "You saved me." In that moment, I understood. Bailey wasn't just my rescuer. He was my mirror, my partner, the one who saw me when I couldn't see myself. Out there in the desert, he'd found more than a dying man. He'd found us, two souls scarred but still fighting, bound by a trust that no chain could break. The station was secure, but the air inside buzzed with unease. Deputies moved like they were stepping on thorns, their voices low, their eyes flicking to every shadow. The intruders were locked away, separated, but their threat lingered like smoke. I sat on the floor of the medical bay, my hand never leaving Bailey's side. His graze was bandaged, a clean wound, no muscle hit, but enough to mark him a hero. His breathing was calm, his chest rising and falling under my palm, but his eyes stayed fixed on the door, watchful, ready. I leaned close, my forehead brushing his fur, warm and gritty from the day's fight. "We're not done yet, are we?" I murmured. He tilted his head, his scarred eye catching the light, and I felt it again. That spark, that promise. Whatever was coming, we'd face it together, not just as ranger and dog, but as something more. Two survivors who'd chosen each other, ready to fight for every breath. Safety felt like a lie, even with the station locked tight and deputies pacing the halls. The air was thick with mistrust, every shadow hiding a threat I couldn't name. My body ached, sunburned bruises pulsing, hands stinging beneath bandages. But the real pain was deeper, a raw wound in my chest that wouldn't close. I wasn't alone, though. Bailey pressed against my leg, his warmth a steady pulse in the dark, his scarred eye catching the faint glow of the medical bay's lamp. He wasn't just a dog. He was my lifeline, the one constant in a world that kept unraveling. I rested my hand on his neck, feeling the rhythm of his breath, and it was like he was holding me together, piece by piece. Hannah slipped in, her footsteps soft, clutching a thick file of incident reports. Her voice was low, tight with unease, her face damp with sweat from the day's heat. "They're not talking." All three of them. No names, no prints, nothing in the system. I frowned, my fingers tightening in Bailey's fur, gritty with desert dust. He shifted, his eyes flicking to mine, sensing the same suspicion that gnawed at me. "That's not possible," I said, my throat dry as the dunes outside. They knew too much. Patrol routes, the terrain, the generator's weak spot. Someone fed them that. She hesitated, then handed me a thinner folder, her expression guarded. "That's why I pulled this. Check the date." I opened it, my pulse spiking, the paper warm from the station's heat. 4 weeks ago, a contractor named Jack Melton got access to the North Flats of Fossil Butte for geological survey maintenance. The signature approving it was supposed to be mine, but it wasn't. Its jagged lines mocked me, a betrayal in ink. Bailey's head tilted, his gaze steady, like he could feel the anger rising in me. I looked at Hannah, my jaw clenched. "This is a forgery." She nodded, her voice barely a whisper, strained by the dry air. And it needed internal clearance. The words hit like a gunshot. My hand sank deeper into Bailey's fur, his warmth anchoring me as my mind spun, the room's heat pressing in. Someone inside had sold me out, someone I'd trusted. Bailey's ears twitched, his body leaning into me, and I felt it again. that spark we'd shared since the desert, when his eyes found mine through the haze. He wasn't just my protector. He was my mirror, reflecting my rage, my fear, my resolve. With him, I wasn't fighting alone. That night, the station was a furnace, its silence pressing against my skull, the air heavy with the day's lingering heat. I needed air, needed to escape the suffocating walls. Outside, a dry wind stirred the dust, cloaking the world in a false peace, but my nerves were electric, every sound a warning. Bailey limped beside me, his bandaged leg barely slowing him, his nose twitching as he scanned the dark. I knelt for a moment, my hand cupping his face, and he pressed his muzzle into my palm, his breath warm against my sunburned skin. "You feel it too, don't you?" I murmured. His eyes held mine, fierce and knowing, like he was saying, "I'm with you, always." Then I saw him, Sheriff Grayson, standing alone at the north perimeter, staring into the desert flats. My gut twisted, a burn crawling up my spine. Bailey's hackles rose, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest, his body tensing against mine. He'd sensed it before I had. Something was wrong. I stood, my hand resting on his back, drawing strength from his steady warmth. "Couldn't sleep?" I called, my voice calm but my eyes sharp, sweat beading on my brow. Grayson turned, his smile brittle like cracked clay. "Something like that." He nodded toward the dunes, too casual. "Funny, isn't it? All these years, and the real danger was never out there." I didn't reply, my fingers curling in Bailey's fur, gritty and warm. His growl deepened, vibrating through me, a warning we both understood. Grayson sighed and stepped closer, his boots crunching ominously in the sand. "They just wanted a deal," he said, his voice heavy, like he was confessing to a stranger. "I didn't know they'd go that far, chaining you up. That wasn't supposed to happen." The words pierced me, slow and toxic, like heat seeping into bone. My breath hitched, betrayal cutting deeper than any chain. "You," I whispered, my voice trembling with rage, my skin prickling in the night's dry air. Bailey pressed harder against me, his growl a shared fury, his body poised to act. He was my strength, my clarity, the one who'd never betray me. Grayson's face sagged, not with remorse, but exhaustion. "You kept getting in the way, Lucas, blocking permits, sniffing around reports that should have stayed buried. They paid me to look away. That's all it was. You left me to die," I said, my voice low, shaking with the weight of a decade's trust shattered. Bailey's warmth was the only thing keeping me from lunging, his fur grounding me against the desert's heat. He nodded, cold as the night's faint breeze. "I thought you were gone. No one survives that sun." His eyes slid to Bailey, narrowing. "I didn't count on him." Bailey's growl turned razor sharp, his muscles taut, ready to strike. I felt his intent, mirrored in my own racing pulse. We were one in that moment, bound by survival and loyalty. Grayson's hand crept toward his belt, too slow, too obvious. Bailey was faster, slamming into him like a dust storm, pinning him to the ground with a grunt. Grayson thrashed, but Bailey held firm, his teeth inches from the sheriff's throat, waiting for my word. I stepped forward, my boots deliberate in the sand, and met Grayson's eyes I'd once trusted with my life. "You betrayed your oath," I said, my voice steady now, fueled by Bailey's unwavering presence. "You betrayed me." Bailey's gaze flicked to mine, asking, trusting, and I nodded. He eased back, still growling, still guarding, his shoulder brushing my leg as Hannah and the deputies rushed in, drawn by the noise. I handed over the forged documents, my hands calm, but my heart raw, sweat stinging my eyes. Hannah scanned the logs, her face grim, her braid damp against her neck in the heat. Bailey stayed glued to me, his warmth a shield against the chaos. Grayson was cuffed in silence. The man who'd shaped my career, now a stranger. His betrayal a wound that would scar. But the damage ran deeper than one man. I turned to Hannah, my voice firm, my shirt clinging to my back. Everything he touched, permits, reports, it's all tainted. We have to rebuild from nothing. She nodded, her eyes fierce, undimmed by the desert's glare. We'll do it together. I looked down at Bailey, his gaze unwavering, his scarred eye a testament to battles we'd both survived. Not without him, I said, my hand sinking into his fur, feeling the life beneath it, gritty, but alive. He leaned into me, his weight a promise, and I knew he'd chosen me as much as I'd chosen him. That night, Bailey paced the station's walls, restless, his bandaged leg no match for his instincts. His ears twitched at every gust, his eyes locked on the shadows outside, searching for threats I couldn't see. I sat by a fan, its hum a faint comfort in the stifling heat, and watched him move. You knew, I said softly, my voice for him alone. Before any of us, you felt it. He paused, turning to me, his eyes piercing the dark. He didn't lie down, but he stepped closer, resting his head on my knee, his breath warm against my hand. I traced the scar above his eye, feeling the story etched there. Loss, pain, survival. We're the same, aren't we? I whispered, my voice hoarse from the dry air. He pressed closer, his weight grounding me, and I felt it. A bond beyond words, forged in the desert, tempered by betrayal. He wasn't just my partner. He was my soul's echo, the one who saw me when I was lost, who fought for me when I couldn't. With him, I wasn't just surviving, I was whole. The days that followed were heavy, cloaked in dust and silence. Investigators from the Capitol tore through the station, unearthing permits, histories, lies Grayson had buried. The truth emerged in shards. Illegal fossil deals, criminal access, rangers silenced or driven out. I gave statements until my throat burned, each word steady, but my mind frayed, sweat soaking my collar. Grayson's betrayal haunted me. Years of shared patrols, shared fights, the badge he'd pinned on me with a grin. He'd been my mentor, my brother, and he'd left me chained, left me for dead. But Bailey never left. He shadowed me through every interview, every briefing, every sleepless walk through the dunes when memories clawed too deep. His shoulder brushed my leg, his eyes scanned the dark, his warmth pulled me back from the edge. When doubt hit, when I questioned every trust I'd ever held, I'd rest my hand on his back, feel the steady rise of his breath, and find my ground. He was my courage, my clarity, the one who'd chosen me when I was nothing but a sun-scorched shell. Whatever waited in the shadows, I knew we'd face it together. Two scarred survivors, bound by a trust no betrayal could break. The deputies didn't just see Bailey as a dog anymore. He was a soldier, a legend, the one who'd pulled me from death's grip. To me, he was more. My anchor, my mirror, the heartbeat I leaned into when the world turned dark. But Hannah Torres, she was becoming something else, something I hadn't expected. Not just a handler or a colleague, but a partner in this fight, someone who saw the same shadows I did and didn't flinch. On the third night after Grayson's arrest, I stood by the station's fenced perimeter, the sky clear, stars sharp as knives above the desert flats. My breath was dry in the heat, my mind churning with the weight of betrayal. Bailey lay at my feet, his scarred eye glinting, his warmth pressed against my leg. When our eyes met, his tail gave a single wag, a quiet vow. We're in this together. Hannah approached, her steps soft, her presence steady in a way that eased the knot in my chest. They're offering you a transfer, she said, her voice low, careful, her face glistening with sweat. Helena. Benefits, counseling, desk job, I didn't answer right away. My hand sank into Bailey's fur, his steady pulse grounding me, but I glanced at Hannah, catching the faint worry in her eyes. Not for herself, but for me. She knew me better than I'd realized, knew I'd never fit in a chair, staring at papers while the desert called. "Do I look like a desk guy?" I said, my voice rough but lighter than I meant, cracked from the dry air. Her smile was tired, warm, like she'd been hoping for that answer. Not even close. She hesitated, then met my gaze, her eyes fierce with something unspoken. "They're not stopping, are they?" My jaw tightened, my fingers curling in Bailey's fur, gritty with dust. Hannah's steady look held me, a silent promise that she was in this fight too. "No," I said. "Too much money in these dunes. Too many names still hidden. Too many out there." She nodded, then handed me an envelope, her fingers brushing mine, a fleeting touch that carried weight, like we were anchoring each other. "Knew you'd say that. It's your transfer to the K-9 division if you want it. Bailey's cleared for reactivation. Your command." I opened the envelope, my heart pounding, the paper warm from the desert's heat. Inside, my name, Bailey's a unit, Ranger Tactical K-9 Unit Echo. I looked at her, doubt flickering. "You think I'm ready for this?" Hannah's gaze flicked between me and Bailey, her voice firm. "You and him? You were born for it." She paused, softer now, her braid damp against her neck. "And I'm not letting you do it alone." Her words hit deep, a spark of trust I hadn't felt since Grayson's betrayal. Bailey nudged my leg, his eyes bright, but Hannah's steady presence was a different kind of strength. A partner who'd fight beside me, not just for me. I knelt by Bailey, my hand tracing his neck, gritty, but warm. "What do you say, partner?" He barked softly, confident, his gaze flicking to Hannah like he approved. I stood, meeting her eyes. "We're in," I said, and the "we" felt bigger now, including her. Peace was a lie, though. The air grew heavy again, that watched feeling crawling up my spine like a heat wave. Deputies reported oddities, tracks that weren't animal, equipment misplaced, radio static spiking at night. Nothing solid, but enough to make my pulse race, sweat stinging my eyes. Late one evening, alone in the communications cabin, the security monitor died, static, then black. I jabbed the controls, but the signal was jammed. Bailey stood, ears up, growl low, his body pressed against me. I felt Hannah's absence keenly. She'd been checking the perimeter, but I knew she'd sensed trouble too. My hand dropped to my gun, Bailey's warmth my only calm. Emergency lights flared outside, stark against the dunes. I stepped out, flashlight in hand, gun at my hip, the night's heat clinging to my skin. Bailey moved ahead, nose cutting the dry wind, but I wished Hannah were here, her steady aim at my back. At the fence, silence gripped us. Sand, rocks, nothing. Then a clink, metallic, like chains from my nightmares. My blood burned, my throat parched. Bailey's growl deepened, his shoulder against my leg, protective, but I felt exposed without Hannah's sharp instincts beside me. A figure darted behind a boulder to my right. "Show yourself," I shouted, voice sharp, dust choking my lungs. No answer, just wind. Bailey's hackles rose, his eyes locked on the spot. Then, a flash of silver in the moonlight. A badge. My heart stopped. Grayson wasn't alone. Someone in uniform, someone trusted, was still out there. I gripped Bailey's fur, his warmth pulling me back from panic, but I needed Hannah's clarity, her courage. I didn't sleep, the badge's glint haunting me. By sunrise, the dust settled, the desert too quiet. Hannah returned, her face grim. She'd found nothing, but her eyes said she believed me. We assembled a team, but the intruder's tracks were gone, erased with chilling skill. I glanced at Bailey, his gaze fixed on the horizon, and felt our bond. His instincts echoing mine, his trust unwavering. But Hannah's quiet nod as she stood beside me was just as vital. Her presence, a promise we'd unravel this together. That afternoon, we drove to an inactive cabin in Sector 9, a place Grayson had conveniently labeled unsafe. My gut screamed it was a lead, and Hannah agreed, her eyes sharp with the same suspicion. Bailey leapt from the truck, hackles up, and I rested my hand on his back, feeling his pulse sync with mine. Hannah's hand brushed my arm as she passed, a quick check-in that said, "We're ready." The cabin was baking, but footprints circled outside, the lock broken and reattached. "We're not alone," Hannah whispered, her gun drawn, her voice steadying me like Bailey's warmth. We moved inside, Bailey at my heel, Hannah close enough that I could feel her focus, the air thick with heat. In the back room, a gunshot shattered the quiet splintering wood. Hannah dove behind the door. I dropped to the side, heart pounding, sweat soaking my shirt. But the bullet hit Bailey. A yelp stabbed my chest as he collapsed, blood pooling from his leg. "No." I scrambled to him, panic choking me, my hands pressing his wound, his blood hot against my skin. His eyes met mine, pained but trusting, and I felt our bond like a lifeline. He was fighting for me, even now. Hannah's voice cut through my fear. "Stay with him." She was already moving, silent, lethal. The shooter stepped forward, Mark Howie, Grayson's deputy, unmasked, his eyes cold. "You should have stayed dead, Ranger," he spat. "Grayson was nothing. I built this." I stood, blood on my hands, rage burning hotter than the sun. "You shot my dog," I said, my voice deadly, Bailey's shallow breaths fueling me. Hannah was out of sight, circling. I had to keep Howie talking. "Why, Mark? Why betray us?" he sneered. "This land's just dirt to them. I made it pay." "At what cost?" I asked, my voice shaking, Bailey's warmth still alive under my touch. "Your honor? Our trust? Spare me," he hissed. Hannah struck. 2 steps, a blow to his knee, and he was down, cuffed before he could blink. She met my eyes, a flash of understanding. We'd done this together, her instincts as sharp as Bailey's. I dropped to Bailey, my hands trembling, dust mixing with his blood. "Stay with me," I whispered, wrapping him in my jacket, lifting him. His weight was heavy, but his faint breath gave me hope. "Evac, now!" Hannah radioed, her voice firm but her hand brushing my shoulder. A quiet, "We'll save him." At the K9 center, the vet said the bullet missed vitals. Surgery would fix him. I stayed, my hand on his fur, Hannah at my side, her presence a steady calm. "He's tough," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine, and I nodded, grateful for her strength, for her belief in us. The story spread. Cameras came. I spoke for those who serve without glory, Bailey's survival. My reason to keep going. When he woke post-surgery, his eyes found mine, his tail wagging weakly. I smiled through tears, my hand cupping his face, dust still clinging to his fur. "Home partner," I said. Hannah squeezed my arm, her smile saying she'd fight for us too. Fall came, the desert cooling. A new unit rose. Echo K9 Task Force. Me as lead, Hannah as chief of operations. Bailey, slower but fiercer, patrolled with me, his shoulder against my leg, our bond unbreakable. Hannah walked with us, her sharp mind and steady heart, part of our team. We were 3 now, dog, ranger, handler, bound by trust, ready for whatever shadows came, knowing loyalty would always lead us through. Would you like to hear more stories about veteran dogs like Bailey? If so, please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next veteran dog stories.